the first tool that I ever used when I started language learning was actually Duolingo. And there's a lot of mixed opinions on Duolingo. It seems some people love it, some people hate it. Personally, it served me pretty well. I mean, I've used it for quite a while. I have a 1,361-day streak. When I first started off, I was just mainly doing Japanese, and then I sort of even transitioned over to Russian. My experience from using it with Japanese in specific is a lot of the nuance sort of isn't there. Like they'll say, well, they have arbitrary ways they want you to phrase things. So it's like, you're meant to say it like this, even though the way I wrote it, for example, isn't necessarily incorrect, and which might cause a bit of issues, because it's like, well, you build this, if you're only using this application to learn the language, you build this idea, well, this is the right way to say it, this is exactly how it translates, when in reality you shouldn't really be looking at other languages through the lens of your own language. You should be interpreting it through the language itself. So and that's another issue that Duolingo obviously has, is because most people will be learning through English, so they'll associate certain words. They'll be like, this is exactly how it is. And some words, especially if the languages are very far away, it simply isn't. There's not going to be an exact translation. You have to just be like, well, this word, like if we're talking Japanese, a word like massacre, it's not no way, it's not like, oh wow, like it's massacre, and you have to understand what context this is used in Japanese and how Japanese people view it through the lens of their own language, because at the end of the day, you're learning that language. And maybe this isn't that much of an issue with other languages. If you're learning a romantic language, something similar to English, like French, Spanish, Italian, stuff like that, because there's probably going to be a lot of overlap with the words. But something that's very foreign, from English, like very differently structured, like a lot of these Asian languages, we're learning Arabic, Hindu, you might just stumble upon phrases, and when Duolingo tells you, no, this is how it is meant to be said, even though it's ambiguous, it might have different meanings, Duolingo just doesn't really want to teach you that, then it doesn't help that much, Another problem that I would say, I think one of the things that's obvious that a lot of people really do like about Duolingo, which the more you think about it, a lot of people have come out and said it, it's very arbitrary, it's not that big of a deal, but it's the whole streak system. And when you think about it from a designer perspective, it's very smart, because they've made this streak so it incentivizes you to keep coming back. And it's like, it's not just, oh, how long have I been using this app? A lot of people just view it as, how long have I been committed to learning this language, or these languages. So it's like, oh wow, you have like 1,000-day Duolingo streak. Like, that's not just like some random app. It's like, shows you have a commitment, And they very smartly made this sort of business move. And a lot of people really do take pride in their streaks, even though in reality, most people, if you're solely learning through Duolingo, you might be doing a lesson a day for 1,000 days. The truth is, you're not going to get very far past beginner. You're going to have to supplement that with other resources, and I think most people understand that, especially if you're learning a difficult language. Like I said, if I assume if you're learning through English, especially if you're learning a difficult language like Japanese, Chinese, something like that, it's very different. You simply won't be putting enough time into this language to reach really any level above beginner. Not to mention that Duolingo simply doesn't have these resources a lot of the time. Like, even if you went through the whole course, like doing all these lessons, you still probably would need have a lot of work to do in the language, which is one of the drawbacks. I think with a lot of stuff like languages or any skill, it's kind of important to have a very easy gateway into the thing. And something like, you could say, like doing pull-ups or push-ups or something like calisthenics for working out is very good for the physical exercise. I think Duolingo is very good for people who actually want to learn a language, and it makes it very approachable. It's not something that you have to, buy a textbook, and it's very like, okay, I have to sit down for an hour and study from this textbook. If it's on your phone, you can just open it up and, just do a lesson on your phone. It means that even someone who's going to work on the train, commuting, maybe at university or school, that they can just take their phone out and just, start learning this language, and it makes it a lot more accessible, which what the truth is, most resources, if you want to learn anything, language, if you want to acquire some skill or proficiency in any skill set, the truth is that the vast majority of resources will be online, because before people would look to books, and now everything that comes from books has been transferred over to online. So all the stuff from Duolingo, it's people who have read books and are contributing to this course, or native speakers who have probably studied, certain grammatical aspects. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of the stuff we see online is simply just a compilation of the stuff that people before would have to scour through books, but we get the most important and indispensable parts, which makes it very efficient when you really break it down. And I'm not saying that online Duolingo is the perfect supplement to a textbook, because I definitely do think the textbook is very important. For context, I went through multiple textbooks. I went through the first two Mina no Nihongo Shokyu textbooks, the beginner textbooks, and they were very helpful. I studied Genki as well, but they're basically the same textbook. It's just slightly different how they teach it. The main thing that Mina no Nihongo does is it is entirely in Japanese, which is, again, like something I said, does not happen in Duolingo, because Duolingo, you always see the other language that you're learning through the lens of your own language, which for some certain things is quite a big detriment. Overall, if someone were to ask me would I recommend Duolingo, really it does depend what your goal is. If you just want to learn a language and you don't know where to start, honestly, I'd say it's a great bet. Like, just go ahead. Really, what have you got to lose? If you get rid of any social media on your phone and just have Duolingo on there, and anytime you pick up your phone to do something on your phone, you just do a lesson of Italian or something, Spanish, French, Japanese, whatever. That's a lot better use of your time than being on social media 99% of the time. And for a lot of people, it's just, what have you really got to lose? A lot of critiques of Duolingo are very valid. Like, they'll say, well, you can't learn the language to a high level proficiency. I think it's very true, but if you start off at this level and then you gradually just fall in love with the language with Duolingo, through the exposure you get through Duolingo, you'll find incentives to look for other tools to use to help you really reach that higher level and understand more of the language. It's definitely not a bad resource, and I think especially for some of the European languages, it can really help you out, because these courses are very well built and they're investing more and more money into this every year. And if it's absolutely free, like I said, you can take it with you anywhere. For most people, it really doesn't hurt. The whole streak thing, I don't even think it's a bad thing necessarily, but the main problem is that it can be a bit of a cope. Like, I don't know, because you can do a lesson like for 3 minutes, whatever, like the minute, and it counts as holding the streak. But is that really, like, if someone has an 1,000-day Duolingo streak, does that really mean that they sat down to do conscious study 1,000 days in a row? Like, it doesn't really mean that. Like, 99% of cases, and for me, having like almost a 1,400-day streak, 4 years, right? It doesn't mean that for me. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna come out and say it. I did have very long streaks of language studying where I didn't miss a day studying like multiple hours a day, but it's not 1,400, I'll tell you that. And you got to keep the Duolingo streak going, but at the end of the day, eventually becomes a bit like a novelty item. And if someone's got like a long streak like this, it's like, well, what do I lose from maintaining it? And it's a valid point. Like, commit yourself to something, and what does Duolingo gains from you maintaining it? And at the end of the day, if you actually just don't do it to, like, as we have a saying in Bulgarian, just to like how do I translate this? It's like just to get it out the way, but you actually sit, like, every time you do Duolingo and you maintain the streak, you actually try and learn something, then that will really help you. That's definitely true. And I understand, because sometimes you're just tired and you're like, man, I don't want to like 11 or something, and you're like, I don't want to like just start learning now, like Russian, like conjugation or something, because it's pretty complex. But The streak, it provides a very strong incentive, because if you see that number going up, you know, and you're like, hey, it's been 100 days, for example, and I've been just dedicated to this, and it gives you motivation. You're like, we got to keep going, you know, build up the momentum, and hopefully we'll get better at the skill. And I don't know about any other apps, but the two main ones that I've used personally that have helped me the most, I would have to say, are definitely Duolingo and Anki. And Anki is very like, they are two very different apps, because Anki is very like, you could argue that it helps a lot more, and it's very utilitarian, right? Like, you can get a lot out of it. It's very to the point. But I think for a lot of people, it takes the fun out of it a little bit, and people find it like dry. But something like Duolingo, maybe it's got less information. You'll get extracting less out of that. But when you're going through it, people see funny like characters, you know, in I don't know, just saying these phrases. It just keeps them more engaged. Especially if it's a younger child or something, you know, a young teenager. It can really help you get onto that path. Like a lot of people in the language learning community say, to sort of gamify the language learning process and make it something that you actively enjoy. And I think that is something that Duolingo does try and imitate. And that is probably the two big differences. Kenna himself, who's actually a language learning YouTuber, launching an app very soon. Language learning app. He talks about this himself. He says that there are a lot of apps that are very like fun in a sense, but you don't get that much out of them. Like, you can take Duolingo, for example, but something like Anki, it's not that fun, but you do get a lot out of it. And to combine that in a sense and get both things, that would be the ideal situation. So I guess, you know, go check out Kenna's app when it comes out. You know, hopefully everything goes well with him. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts on Duolingo. If you want to learn a language, it's a good gateway drug into language learning. If you don't want to do it, I mean, the streaks, you don't have to keep a streak, but it's a cool thing, I guess. I don't know if anybody cares. No one's really asked me about mine. I don't really care that much, but hey, it is what it is. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Peace.